Thank you everybody for jumping on this call with us today. We're going to try to go through some of the more in-depth options and special features of the Webex platform that we've seen over the last year or so have been more useful to our community of, for everything from teaching to student groups to special events. So we hope that you'll take something out of this and be able to apply it to your courses online as we keep doing the virtual thing. And it's also not the your one-stop end-all be-all exposure to any of this stuff. We just want to give a kind of a high-level overview and a look at how these things are supposed to work. So when you see it or try it yourselves later, it's a little bit more familiar. And if you ever need a refresher or anything, or you do have more in-depth questions that we can't spend enough time on right now, we'll also have avenues for you to be able to reach out to IT tech support throughout the year. And we can schedule one-on-one appointments in a video call like this, so we can do screen sharing and help you troubleshoot or just get oriented as much as you might need. With that, I will go ahead and start us off now. So the first topic I've got on my agenda is to talk about scheduling. And whenever we, anything WebEx related at FIT, I usually direct people to our portal. It's fitnyc.webex.com. And let me go ahead and share my screen and I'll start walking through that with you. So when you go to fitnyc.webex.com, you'll come to a page that is, this is what that will look like. It's got the FIT logo in the corner. In the upper right, you've got the sign in button. On the sign in button, kind of the standard login option is through WebEx. You'll type in your FIT email and then it will redirect you through my FIT, where you can type in your username, just first underscore last, and then your FIT password. So nothing extra to memorize. That's nice. But since we're a Google campus and our accounts are all tied to G Suite, you also have this Google option. And that's just like any other website where you can sign in through Google. If you choose that, it will bring up the little Google interface in the middle and you can choose your FIT account and sign in that way with single sign-on. So it's a nice thing for speed. It's also good if FIT is ever doing any planned maintenance or there's some downtime on the identity system that controls all that. If for whatever reason the normal sign-in through my FIT's page doesn't work, then the Google option is a good contingency plan for you. But I'll just do the normal process for anybody who hasn't seen us. This is the advanced class, so maybe this isn't new, but there it is. I've got that pre-populated. And it brings you through to the main page here. So this is kind of your main portal for all things WebEx, like I said. This is where you can see your personal room, and the information is right here in the middle. You can copy that join information into an email or a calendar invite if you ever need to add that for someone. At the bottom, we kind of have a list of upcoming meetings that you've got scheduled, a short list. On the right-hand side, the menu here, the meetings will give you a longer list of all of your meetings, and you can do that by date range. Previous recordings that you've made, you can find and retrieve those, download them, share them from this page. Preferences, just some layout. This is where you can change your picture and what you want to call your personal room, even customize this little persistent URL, and some more features we'll talk about here in a moment. But for scheduling, the schedule button here in the middle, that's where you can create a new meeting, either a meeting or a recurrence of meetings. And that's a pretty straightforward process as far as naming it, choosing the start time and date. If this is going to be a recurring meeting, you can choose multiple days of the week or even a monthly or a yearly cadence that goes on forever or ends after a certain time. But down here in the attendees field, we'll talk about one of our first special features is the ability to have co-hosts with your meetings. So in the attendees field, typically, I don't think we at FIT use WebEx itself to invite people to meetings. We'll typically create a meeting and then share that click to join link with people through email or through a calendar invite or something of that nature, a Blackboard announcement. But you can type actual addresses in here and invite people directly. That's also true for external guests who aren't with FIT. But if you do invite somebody who's in our fitnyc.edu email domain, I'll use James here as I always pick on him. So he's added, and because he's part of the FIT organization, First of all, he came up in the directory. The FIT directory is associated with that. So as you start typing in names, it'll give you suggestions like in Google. But it'll also have this little person icon next to him. And choosing and clicking on that will light it up blue and designate that individual as a co-host. When you schedule the event, they'll also receive an email, as would anybody in this attendee field, that invites them automatically with a link to join, telephone numbers they can dial in if they need to use a telephone instead of computer speakers, troubleshooting information, et cetera, et cetera. But if they're designated as a co-host, it'll also announce to them there that they're designated as a co-host. And a co-host can actually, they can start a meeting for you. If you're not there or you're unable to attend, they actually, when they join the meeting, they'll be the host until you join at least. They can, if you do join the meeting and you've got one or more co-hosts with you, they'll continue to be co-hosts throughout that meeting. So they can do things like help you manage the microphones, set up and manage the breakout rooms. A lot of things that we can go through when we're in the meeting experience. But if you've got any kind of team that you're using to produce either a class or even a special event, that co-host feature is nice. There used to be alternative hosts, so it was either you or somebody else, but now you can have up to 100 co-hosts working alongside you. So really at any kind of scale, that's a nice option to have. So I'll get down here to the advanced options in the scheduler. And there's a few sections. I'll just touch on some of the high points here in the interest of time. But in the audio connection options, probably one of the questions we get the most is how do I get rid of that darn beep noise whenever someone leaves or joins a meeting? That's disruptive. And if you don't need that security feature, it's annoying. So here it's called the entry and exit tone. And you can do this in setup. You can just simply select no tone and then it goes away. You don't have that feature anymore. That's also something you can access in the meeting menus when you're running a session as a host or a co-host. Below that, there's the option for kind of microphone controls. So hosts and co-hosts, one of your special powers is you can mute anybody in a meeting. So if someone's left their mic on and there's a dog barking in the background, or that, they're away from keyboard, they just don't know that. It's very easy to mute individuals or everybody in a room if you want to get the attention of everyone. They've removed the ability for hosts to unmute people. That's a kind of a privacy thing that most of the platforms have figured out. They don't want someone to be able to reach out and turn your microphone on a computer. But you can always ask them to unmute themselves. If you click the unmute button on their microphone, they'll get a little pop-up message that says the host has asked you to unmute yourselves. But you can also, with that, choose the checkbox here. You can deselect it rather to disallow people to unmute themselves. So if you're doing kind of a directed presentation and you don't want people interrupting, taking that feature away will let you really control how noisy that room gets. And that's also agile. You can change that in the course of a meeting. So if the beginning part is more of a directed conversation or an interview and you don't want interruptions from the course or from the class, you can have that feature disabled, and then when you want to open it up for Q&A, you can simply allow people to unmute themselves at their leisure, and it's less microphones for you to manage. This feature down here, this checkbox, pretty self-explanatory, but just making the default as people join your meeting, they're joining muted. So again, as people are getting connected, if they haven't put their headphones on or they don't realize that their microphone's open and they're making a lot of noise, those people would join muted. And until they physically manually unmute themselves, they won't be interacting. So that may or may not be a good feature. Typically for if you've got a very large session with a lot of people, that's just a nice way to maintain the decorum. I'll skip down here to the scheduling options. And just a few high points in here. If you're ever terrified that you're not going to record a session that is important, you can actually pre-select it to be automatically recording when the first co-host or host joins. The breakout sessions are now pre-enabled for everybody. If you're inviting people in that attendee list that we looked at earlier, you actually can pre-assign breakout sessions now. We'll get into breakout sessions a little bit more later on in this session, but it is kind of a nice feature if you are planning a complex day of breakout sessions and you want to assign specific individuals to specific breakouts. That's there. And I guess I'll go down here to the attendee privileges at the very bottom. And this is nice because you can not only restrict or give people the ability to, annotate and share content, but you can also restrict who their chat privileges are with. You can, simply deselect students' abilities to speak to other students. If you want to turn that off, they can only chat with you or with the active presenter at the time, or just with you. But that's where those little features are hidden. Just a lot of granular control in this product in general. And, for better or for worse, the granularity adds to, there's a million ways to do anything in WebEx, so it doesn't make it that intuitive all the time. But if you've got a specific need, there's probably a way to do it within the platform. And like I said, just trying to highlight some of the low-hanging fruit that people ask about or people find more useful. But that's essentially scheduling at the FIT NYC WebEx portal, fitnyc.webex.com. And yeah, I'll definitely get into annotating and some of these actual features as we go. But step one is just the scheduling here. That's not the only option we have now, especially if you're a teaching faculty member using Blackboard nowadays, as many of us are. We actually have an integration within Blackboard as well. So I'll go to my little fake class that they've set up for us to do software experiments. I'll show you this. It's a much simplified version of the scheduler at fitnyc.webex.com.
Richard, can I ask a quick question?
Sure thing.
When you hook up WebEx to Blackboard, like you're going to show us, will that meeting that is that meeting the same as the one on the main screen that we just saw? Will the main screen that we just saw reflect the WebEx link to Blackboard?
So if you're referring to this link here,
right.
So this link is really just to your what they call your personal room, which is identical to a scheduled WebEx meeting in terms of features, but they give you a persistent URL, so you never have to worry about what the extension is. I add this to my email signature, for example, just so if I ever have to have a quick ad hoc meeting with somebody, it's right there. It's easy for us to escalate. There's actually a feature there. If someone comes to your personal room, they can click a button and send you an email that says, I'm waiting in your personal room. So it's kind of an office hours function. But a scheduled meeting is a separate one that has a unique, meeting number and password, and it's generally restricted to people, who've been invited. So when you schedule in Blackboard, you'll actually be creating these closed scheduled meetings, and it just does it a lot more quickly, and it reduces, because all of your students are also in the shell of the Blackboard course that you're teaching, it eliminates the need to invite people or make sure that you're communicating that to them. They'll be able to go directly to the WebEx session and click to join. So I think it's a little bit easier. I won't spend a ton of time on this.
It is easier. It is.
Yeah. I've been pleasantly surprised by this little integration. I didn't have a lot of hope for it at first, but so here's my Blackboard shell, kind of plain Jane, because this is a demo class, but the little plus button in the upper left-hand corner here is where you can add different links, and we want to add a tool link for WebEx. You can call this whatever you want, class meetings or WebEx or whatever you want to call it. If you click this little checkbox, that's going to make it visible to the students as well. And then on the type, it's going to be WebEx. That's down at the very bottom of this list. All these options they give you. And when you submit, there it adds it right here at the bottom of your list. We've got a ton of tools. I need to clean this out, but I'll go ahead and drag this up just to make it a little bit easier to get to. And we've done this a few times, I guess. Okay, so there it is, front and center for everybody. Now, when I click into it, again, I'm the faculty member for this course, for example. The first time you come to this Learning Tools Interoperability plugin, this LTI, you'll have this setup page where you can choose what features you want to have. Classroom collaboration is kind of like a Slack feature. It's where you can have little teams of people, of students assigned to different workspaces almost. It's a persistent chat where you can file share. You can escalate to a video call if you want to do that, whiteboarding, et cetera, et cetera. We don't really use it a lot present day, but it is there, and you're welcome to try it out. All the students, faculty, and staff have access to these products, so there's no reason you couldn't use it. It's just there might be a little bit of a learning curve. We're just kind of focusing on the virtual meetings and the conference calls like we're in right now. So that's the virtual meeting section. So check that one off. And then office hours. This is similar. It's geared, like it says, specifically towards scheduling office hours, and it's a really interesting interface. So I'll show it to you briefly, but essentially you choose what hours of the day and what days of the week that you want to be available for office hours, how long those office hour appointments should be, and what if any buffers between scheduled appointments you want to preserve just for your own reset time. And then it builds a grid of little button click options for students that they simply can come to this page, choose the appointment window they want to book with you, and once they confirm it, a nice email comes to you and to them that says this student's name from this course has requested an office hour appointment for this time and this date. So it just becomes very easy to organize and manage all that, especially if you're running multiple courses. So I'll just check those two and click apply. The first time you do this as well in the setup page here, you also might have to go down to this authorize with LMS option here, where mine's already authorized. It's grayed out, but if it's blue and it says authorize, you just click that and it takes you through a page to just ask your permission. This is basically Blackboard asking you, hey, this Webex program wants to use your Blackboard shell. Are you familiar with that? They want to make sure some third-party software is not hacking you. You also, the first time you come here and go into the virtual meetings, you'll have to log into your Webex account through Blackboard. So that's the same thing in reverse. That's Webex saying, hey, whoa, some Blackboard program wants to use your Webex account. Is that okay? I just want to have explicit permissions from the users to make sure that nobody's doing anything tricky on the internet like we see a lot nowadays. So once you jump through those hoops, though, it's a one-time process and you shouldn't have to do it again. So I've selected my virtual meetings and my office hours options, and when I apply them with the button, that's what populates these fields up at the top here. I've got virtual meetings and office hours now. So if I click into virtual meetings, I've actually got a lot of examples already teed up for me here. But the way you create your meeting series or individual meetings, you just click over here to new meeting. And like I said, very simplified version of the scheduler we looked at, where you simply name the title that you want to call this recurring pattern of meetings, the start date, how long that meeting is, if it's a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour lecture. For the session type, all these options over here, by the way, they're grayed out, or they're very gray. I don't know why they didn't just use a black font for this, but they are all valid and accessible. They're not turned off. But I would just recommend sticking with the meeting type of session. The training features have now been rolled into meetings, so there's no reason to break out to that. And even the bigger the event webinar type, that's largely accessible through meetings with the tools that we're showing you today. So keep it simple. Just call it a meeting. You can choose your recurrence pattern here. So if you're setting up for a weekly class, for example, again, if you've got a Tuesday, Thursday course, you want to repeat every week. Choose either an end date or to end after however many sessions you'd like. And then when you create the meeting there, that is all it takes. And they all populate over here. You see I've got this example recurring meeting. It's 4 to 5 and it's got the dates, so you've got them listed. You can always come back as the instructor for the course. You can edit those preferences if there's anything you want to change in that, or delete an individual session if it's a vacation week or something like that. So you can manage it that way. And then when a student comes in, let me go back to the home page here. I'll turn on the student preview so you can kind of see what their angle on this is. So now I'm Johnny Student, and I'm going into the Webex tool here. And see, I don't have the setup ability or anything like that, but when I'm in the virtual meetings tab, I just have the join option. So as long as I'm on the right date and time, it'll always have the next one teed up for you. So it's fairly intuitive for them. They can also see, recordings. If you've posted recordings of sessions or there, they can see links to past meetings. But only you'll be able to really edit and schedule those. So let me
I
exit
have a
that preview.
question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I jumped in a little bit late.
Yep.
So that setup, what if your class runs at different times during the week? You have to separate that out as to two different. sessions, you can't do it together recurring then.
Yeah, you could probably the fastest way to do that would be to schedule one recurring session for the time
Class
on
and then,
one date, then another recurring session with the same name but on the other
right.
date.
Yep, yep, okay,
Yeah, the calendars aren't as sophisticated as that, but
okay.
um, so I'll dip into this tool one more time just to take a brief look at the office hours interface for us. So office hours here, you can see I've just chosen my meeting duration is for 30 minutes. I want to have a buffer of 30 minutes in between. You know, if somebody books a 9 o'clock meeting, I don't want to have a 9:30 right on the tail of that. So you can kind of fine tune those to your preferences. And then I simply click on what range of times I want to be available throughout the week. And then down at the very bottom of the page, for whatever reason, there's a save button. So click that and it will lock those changes in. And then when a student comes into the same page, like I said, they'll see a condensed version of what hours you're available for, and they click to book. Very easy. So that's the Blackboard interface. Not too deep, but if anybody has questions on that, we can come back to it at a later time or offline if need be.
Um,
Hmm.
a quick question, Richard. When you were on the main page and scheduling a meeting, you went through the steps of attendees and scheduling. The whole thing opened up. Can we invite the hosts? Can we mute people? What I don't see on the interface for Blackboard is um, that same type of screen.
Right. Yeah. It, like I said, it's a much simpler interface. It doesn't have the advanced features that the full page has.
Okay,
But it does actually interface with your account. So once you book those sessions here in Blackboard, you can
right.
still log in at fitnyc.webex.com, find that session in your upcoming meetings, and edit that. So you can add those features there if you want to, if there's something particular you want to add.
So the meetings I schedule on Blackboard, if I go to the FIT WebEx page and sign in and everything, it will be on the upcoming meeting schedule.
Yeah, upcoming meetings here, it gives you, I think, the next couple of days worth of meetings or this day's worth of meetings. And if you go to the actual meetings tab, that's where you can find kind of the deeper list. Like, here's my
Okay.
example
Oh,
meeting.
that's helpful. And okay, thanks a
Yeah.
lot. Thank you.
And so you can click the little pencil icon and go in and edit just the meeting or the entire series, all those good things.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So absolutely, good question. So so we've looked at the FIT NYC portal, we've looked at the Blackboard integration. I'll also just look at the Google Calendar integration. So to me, this is a good way just to schedule quick meetings with people in the community or in your address book with ad hoc video conferencing added to it. Whenever you're scheduling something, this little add video conferencing option is here. Of course, you can add a Google Meet session that's baked right in, but we've also included the WebEx integration so you can quickly create a WebEx session tied to this specific event date and time. It automatically generates the click to join link, the dial in telephone number, everything you need to conduct a full-fledged WebEx. You can also make these recurrences this way. And you can also schedule this in a personal room if you wanted to use your personal room instead of a regular closed meeting. The only caveat here is when you do that, it's not editable at FIT NYC. This is only editable here in the Google Calendar, so you don't have the ability to add co-hosts or some of those more advanced features we were just looking at. But for, quick and simple scheduling, that's kind of hard to beat. I think a lot of people already use Google Calendar just for department meetings, things like that, and adding a conference onto it is pretty simple now. Okay, so take a breath. That's scheduling. That was the first bullet point.
Quick,
Not all of these are that deep, but yeah, go ahead. A question?
we had a quick question from Kostas. He wanted to know, when you do the WebEx recording, it would be sent to the WebEx cloud, and then it would be as it's normally. It wouldn't go to any Blackboard cloud where it would automate to the students. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yeah, recordings
Okay.
there still. Yeah, they still go to your account, and all the same sharing and downloading features are there. And I am recording this session. I just saw that come up just in case we can post this again for posterity if I get a good take out of it. So hopefully I'm doing okay. So my next bullet point here actually is about recording. So that was apropos. I'll go into my recording section here and we can see all the little recordings I've done in the past. I'll see if I can find something safe. Um, so this is where you can share content out with other individuals. You can provide them a link. You can set password protection to it. We really like the feature that you can download an MP4 file, and you can download the closed captioning as well. So if you want to, my team does a lot of editing, or if we want to post it somewhere else, archive it, that's available to you. But one thing we've got to show you is over here in Preferences. I'll go over to the recording preferences. And there are many ways to record a WebEx now, apparently, and this will surprise you if you're not anticipating it. You can choose the layout of the recording, both for when you're sharing content, like right now I'm sharing my screen, and when you're when you're just speaking. The defaults will be kind of the stage presentation. So when I'm sharing content, it would record little windows of the most recent active speakers at the top. But you can see I also can select kind of a picture-in-picture layout, or what I have for this session, I'm just recording the content only. So faces won't come alongside of that. It'll just be the content and a voiceover. And then when there's not content being shared, the default is to record the grid view, which in a classroom, that may not be what you want at all. Maybe you do want to record 25 faces looking at you, but the stage view is another valid option there, where the active speaker is the focus of the image, and then kind of there's a little gallery view above of the recent speakers, or the other people in the active conversation. Or you can just do focus, which is what I'm doing now. So when I'm not sharing content, it will just be showing my camera. It doesn't show any of the participants. I guess you can also just make it blank if you if you don't want to be on recorded camera. But they do
Just
give you the
audio.
option, and it's yours to drive. So it's just a good thing to be aware of when you're setting it up. And we found in practice that this takes effect at the next time you press the record button. It's very fast. It doesn't take 24 hours or anything, but it will. So I've already started recording this session. If I change these settings, it won't change how this session looks, but it will change the next one. So it's just something you want to set up ahead of any recording you plan to do. Okay, well, I'll go back to camera view at this point.
Hey, Rick,
Mm-hmm.
he had a quick question. If we were recording in the focus setting, will it record the host and the co-host if it's a conversation, or just the active speaker?
So yeah, the active speaker is simply whoever is on microphone. And if you're watching the grid view here as we go around the room, it kind of lights up a box blue, whoever's speaking. That's what they're considering the active speaker. There's a little bit of intelligence behind that, where it won't just immediately flip to people if there's a cough or a pencil drop or something like that. It has to kind of lock onto a speaker. But it gives you kind of that produced, cutting to the next person, as if you're watching a TV interview or something like that. Right. So the next tip I've got here on my list is we always recommend, we started doing this for event production, but if you're going to be hosting a meeting, if you're going to be running a class, we do recommend downloading the Webex app to your computer instead of just using the browser experience. The browser join is perfectly valid for students, for guests, for anybody. There's not really any reason for them to grab the application if they're just attending and watching a session. Even for content sharing, casual content sharing, most web browsers can support that. Some older web browsers, like older versions of Safari, don't support all the content sharing, things like that. But as the host, I think it's useful to have all of the features and options as a button or a menu that's kind of available at your fingertips. So I do recommend getting the app. Once you have the app on your computer and you've signed in with your FIT account, you really could just forget about it, because all of the rest of your interactions with WebEx will be like we've seen already, either through the portal or through clicking on a calendar invite or through Blackboard. Once you click on a WebEx link, it will just launch in that application instead of opening up in your browser. So less resource intensive on your computer. The web browser interface is asking a lot of web browsers to put a live meeting through those, so that tends to affect computer performance a lot. And like I said, just better access to all the bells and whistles. So, and anybody who wants to use the application, it's free. You can use it as a guest without an account, but it will tie right into your FIT account as well. So let's look at hosting and co-hosting briefly. I'm going to share my screen again, but this time, instead of sharing my desktop, I will share my view of WebEx so you can see what I'm seeing. I'll share my meeting window here. Okay, so now you can see the interface I have here. See me seeing you. So I'm a host right now, so I've got a few options on screen. First, in the participants window, we can see that James and Rory here, they're also designated as co-hosts right now, so they have some of these features, most of them, in fact. They are, first of all, the mute all button is there. So if you've started a large session and there's 50 open microphones, instead of having to go through each individual, microphone and clicking it off, you can simply mute everybody. The unmute, again, it's a little different than it used to be. You can't really unmute everybody's microphone, but I can send a pop-up request for people to unmute themselves. If I click on an individual, that person will get a pop-up that says the host has asked you to unmute yourself. But you can also quickly remute that if you have to. And then next to that, we've got the more options. Those are what we looked at in the scheduling, where you can have people mute on entry automatically and disallow people to unmute themselves. While we're in the participants list here, I'll also show you can right click on someone, or if you're on an Apple computer, it's a control click, I believe. But that brings up a little context menu where you can change anybody who's in the meeting to a host or a co-host. Probably co-host is what you'd want to do unless you were planning on leaving. And that's nice if you've invited people who are participating, but maybe they weren't part of FIT's domain, so you couldn't set them up as a co-host when you're scheduling. You can kind of do that on the fly in a session. You can also do neat things from this little context menu. Move to lobby is a nice one that we use every once in a while. For voting purposes, you want to sequester someone while you're having a private vote that involves them. You can move someone into the lobby. You're on my team. I'm going to move you into the lobby just so people can see this. Sorry. So it says you move to the lobby. You use this little orange flag that says they're in the lobby, and I can simply readmit when ready. That's also a bonus tip here. If someone in your call, they start to get, crackly microphone or robot voice, sometimes happens. We've found that if you briefly move them into the lobby and then admit them back to the meeting, sometimes that's enough to jog their connection on their computer and it fixes it. So not 100%, but it's a quick enough thing to try. It might help if it's getting really bad. The other thing you can, question?
I'm sorry, can you move several people to the lobby?
Yeah, you can have as many people as you want. And those it's not really, they can't interact with each other as it were a breakout room. It really just puts them into meeting limbo so they can't hear or see anything.
And if they're in the lobby, can they see the screen or no?
No, they just see a little screen that says the host has put you in the lobby. You'll be you'll be readmitted later. I forget what the jargon is, but it just kind of puts them in a holding pattern.
Thank you.
And then if you ever, hopefully not, but if you ever have a situation where someone's being disruptive and, maybe you've got somebody who's found their way into your meeting through a friend of a friend and they're a bad guy, you also have the option to expel, and that will sever their connection from your meeting and remove them from it altogether. And that helps a lot. We haven't really seen that happen yet, but it is one of those powers that you have as a host in these things, or a co-host. So in addition to the microphone controls and the roles assignment and some of that lobbying capability that you have as a host and a co-host, the breakout sessions are also down here.
Rick, before you move on, there's a question. Do students have presenter privileges without being a co-host?
Yep, unless you've specifically removed that, it is an option that you can take away, a participant privilege that you can remove, but the default is that anybody can present when they click their share screen button. So you don't have to do anything special to assign that or allow that. They'll be able to participate without any preamble on your part. Like I said, if it's something where you are planning to run more of a webinar-like experience, or you have a questionable audience, I guess maybe you can remove that feature. But the default is it's ready to go for you.
Got another quick question too. When you do expel someone, how long are they timed out for? Is it for the entire rest of the session if they wanted to rejoin? Or is it like 10 minutes, something along those lines?
I've never really tested this on someone with an account. I think if you expel someone from a meeting who's signed in to Webex, they're a known person, they're not just a guest, I think that would stick for that session. We've only tested it with guests and incognito browsers, and it actually seems to block that IP address for a few minutes at least. So if it's someone who keeps coming back in, like there's a hacker really trying to attack your meeting, it may not be a permanent solution. But in a case like that, actually, it's a good question. I would recommend locking the meeting at that point. So if you've got everybody in your meeting who really needs to be there and you've got a bad actor trying to get in or trying to be disruptive, once you expel them, you can go up to the meeting option here in your app and choose lock meeting. And you get a nice little key icon here on the screen. And even with someone with a direct link with a password, everything, they won't be able to join that meeting. I believe the default behavior is they'll come to the lobby. And so they'll show up here as someone that's in your lobby. And you can choose to admit them at that point. But that's a security feature as well. Even if someone's got the invitation, they can't get in the door unless you say so. So I'll go ahead and unlock this in case someone happened to try to join us at that moment. Is that okay? So hosting and co-hosting, yes, the co-host can help you manage the breakout sessions as well. We'll get into breakout sessions here next, but that's helpful if you do have a team or a teacher's assistant that can be setting those things up for you while you do the lecture part of it. But with that, I'll go ahead and jump into how breakouts work, at least on the basics, and I'll continue sharing my screen just for this part so you can see my interface. But when you click the breakout sessions, it's fairly intuitive. Right now, you just choose how many breakout sessions you want to have to begin with. So, say 4 sessions, and it automatically calculates that'd be 5 people per session. If you want to assign them automatically, it'll, click that button and the computer will just go down the alphabetical list and sort people into these sessions. You can also choose manual assignments where it won't do that. I'll stick with the automatic just so we can see that. And so here we go. It's created breakout sessions for us. I'll close these little arrows, but you can see each one has a fairly random collection of people in them. But from this panel, I can also rename these breakout sessions. So if breakout session 1, 2, 3, 4 is boring, we can call this something more intuitive for people if you've got specific purposes for these sessions. You can also change the assignments here, so I can go through and find who's assigned to it now. Or I can do the opposite of that over here in my not assigned list. If I was doing manual assignments, for example, everybody would be here until they're put into a meeting. So I can click on that person and say, I'm going to move you to session 2. All right, now James is over here in breakout 2 when we start them. So that's the quick version of how to assign people. And we'll go over here to the settings just so some of the extra features. So the default is that when attendees would like, they can return to the main session, but if you want to keep them in their breakout sessions until you say it's time to stop, you can disallow that. There's also I guess when we create the breakout sessions, it will ask you to go join the session. You'll get a pop-up session, but we can actually automate that by deselecting this allow attendees to join session later. If you know this is going to be, you've got a tight agenda maybe, and you want to keep these breakout sessions to a certain time length, you can automate that as well. Say, hey, we're going to have 20 minutes worth of breakouts, and then we'll come back after that. And then finally, there's kind of a little cool down timer at the end when you stop the breakouts or when the time runs out on the breakouts. Everybody sort of gets a little notification, hey, the breakouts are wrapping up, and in the 60 seconds in this case, you can fine tune that a bit up to 2 minutes, or you can just turn that off altogether and stop means stop. So those are kind of the basics. Looking at the literature, it looks too the changes that are coming out to this month's version of Webex, they should also allow people to choose their own adventure. So if you've got your breakout sessions created, you can set this up to where your attendees can choose which breakout session they go into. So that is also nice too if you don't want to be so granular on this breakout assignment. But as it stands today, let's see, I might take Jimmy out of this. Okay, got all my co-hosts out now. It won't automatically assign hosts and co-hosts to the breakouts. Hosts and co-hosts during breakout sessions will be able to manually join whichever breakout they prefer and do some communications things we'll see in a second as well. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, I'll stop sharing my screen so we can get kind of the regular experience this as guests. I'll start the breakout sessions. Everybody can go into those, kind of see the layout, practice interacting. It's actually exactly like what you're doing now. It's a miniature version of a WebEx meeting within a WebEx meeting. But we'll do that. I'll send some messages. You can ask for help if you'd like me to come visit or one of the co-hosts, and we'll just do that just so you can see the student's perspective on it briefly. So I'll start the session. All right, I'll go ahead and end everybody here so we can get back to business. All right, sorry, I hope I didn't interrupt anybody's conversation by unceremoniously removing it, but I sent a little broadcast message in that. Hopefully you all saw the pop-up message, so you could see how you might be able to use that in orchestrating set breakout sessions. And then just the ability, I just have like a little join button when those are on next to all the breakouts, so I can very easily pop into a session, talk to the group that's there, answer any questions, just check on progress.
Thanks,
And then,
Delo. Sorry, Richard.
oh, sure.
When I clicked that leave meeting, it brought me all the way out and I had to rejoin. Is that what's supposed to happen?
Leave meeting. So I had deselected the option for people to come back to the main session. So so that was the leave meeting button. But if you're in like I'm as the host, when I'm in a breakout session, my little red X turns into kind of like a red exit door. And if you hover over, it says leave breakout, and that brings you back to the main session. I think because I had turned off the ability to leave the breakout session, your only option at that point was just to leave. That's what that was.
All right, thanks.
So that's breakouts.
There's one quick question on the
Yeah.
breakouts. Melanie wanted to know, are the breakouts recorded as separate recordings, or are they just the main session?
Yeah, I think just the main session is recorded right now. That's a good question. I'll verify that, but I'm going to say at this point, I think the breakout sessions are not recorded separately.
Yeah, I think that's right when I used them. I have a question. Is there
Oh, you might have cut out there.
where students, I can meet with them individually while the others are doing something, but I want to be able to meet the student individually and look at his writing or her writing. Or their
Yeah.
writing.
So in that case, if you wanted to do a manual breakout session and manually assign the individual into it and then join that session with them, the same sharing feature is there. They can share their screen and you can.
In the breakout session, they can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What are all the other students doing when you're doing that, though? That's
They're working on the writing. I run a writing workshop.
right.
And
I
so
see,
they're working
right.
on the writing, and I like to be able to not so much have fixed appointments, but just sort of, normally in the classroom, I would just bop around and see how they're doing and help them on an as needed
Yeah, that makes
basis.
sense, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Could you put them in the lobby and then join them in the lobby, Rick?
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I think, well, again, the lobby in this is more of like, I call it meeting limbo because there's no interactivity.
Oh, there's nothing there, right? You can't
yeah,
say
they're
anything,
kind of,
right?
yeah, it
Right.
just kind of
Have-
But
holds
they
you in
could be
reserve.
working in another tab and then hear me when I say, okay, it's your turn.
Yeah, and
If
then
I can
join
present
the
the breakout sessions, that solves the problem.
Yeah, it seems to me
Yeah, I
that's-
think that'd be my recommendation
Yeah.
for a scenario
Okay,
like
thank
that.
you.
Sure. Good question. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show was content sharing, and this is one in the media department, we like this a lot. So one of the things we use for Webex is sharing full motion video and content that's not just a static PowerPoint or spreadsheets. We do a lot of multimedia. So let me see, I'll share my screen so you can see what I'm doing here. All right. So you can see my little share button at the bottom down here. When I click this, you might not ever notice it, but there's a little drop down option and the default is optimized for text and images. So that's why when you're sharing content on a meeting platform and it looks kind of choppy and it may not be smooth if you've got animations or if you're watching video, you can remove that that limitation by optimizing for motion and video in WebEx. And that will allow you to present content that's in high definition and full motion video, much more pleasing on the eye, especially if you've got any kind of motion involved. It also, on this, will light up the option to share your computer audio. So not only can you share things like I'll share a YouTube video here, but if you had a local file that you're playing back off of your computer, it'll take the computer's sound and electronically bring it into the meeting. So you don't have to rely on the speakers going into your microphone for people to hear or kind of off-camera sound. It comes back through really well produced. First of all, I'll show the opposite. Just to clarify this, optimize for text and images. This is without the motion optimization. So I'll go back to my browser here, and I've got a YouTube clip pulled up. So this is just us flying over the moon. Let me see if I can find some motion here. Okay, so this is a fairly fast-moving thing, and for me, it looks buttery smooth. I'm watching a full motion video, but if you're watching it through the live meeting, you're probably seeing some chop. It's not moving very smoothly. It looks a little jagged and rugged. So let me stop that, and I'll go back to the same.
Glad you're doing this.
Yeah, I think this is important for FIT. Our content tends to be a little bit more, not your average Excel sheet. So I'll optimize for motion and video, and I've got the sound feature on as well. And now when I share my screen, we'll come back to that same, let's see if I can find that same clip again where it's moving pretty quickly. There we go. So now you can see the motion's a lot more smooth. Also, my mouse going around the screen's less choppy. I think that even that's valuable if you're teaching software, because when that mouse is just bouncing around the screen, it's tough to track sometimes. I'll also unmute, and you can hear what that sounds like coming through the speakers. A moment of zen for our Webex meeting.
Right,
It's kind of quiet music, but it works for heavy metal as well. So I'll stop sharing that. And that very simply just gives you some more sophisticated content sharing when you're in a WebEx session. It's faithful in the recording as well.
Right.
Did I hear a question there?
Yeah, sorry, it's Leo. I'm turning on my video. Did I turn on my video? I don't know. Okay, sorry. So that you're looking at my face while I talk to you.
Well, I've got an avatar.
I have a question with regards to if you have a video within a PowerPoint and you optimize for video, and then you get to the PowerPoint slide, you play the video, it absolutely does work brilliantly. But sometimes because you're sharing your content, if you have I didn't realize this until we did some of our sessions, that the audience was actually seeing pixelation where I had some of the floating windows, like the chat window floating on that my view.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about? It only happens in when I did the optimize for video. It never happened when it was optimized for text. But
kind of a little blur.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. In general, if you're not familiar with it, if you are sharing your content or sharing your screen in that case, it first of all takes all of your WebEx controls and moves them to a little pop-up bar at the top of the screen. And then it gives a participant window kind of floating in space there that you can move around your desktop or resize or get rid of. Same thing, you can open up the chat window. But yeah, you might have some weird artifacts because the content sharing isn't sharing those portions. It leaves those invisible. And so what Dewey was saying is, yeah, it causes some interference there. I will say it's very difficult to manage any kind of meeting on a single laptop screen if that's what many of us are working with at home nowadays. But so best case scenario, if you can move those windows, those floating panels as much to the periphery as you can, just to minimize how much they're coming through, it's probably going to optimize it for your audience. So good point. Thank you, Dewey. And then I've got two more topics here as we're rounding out the hour, and by all means, questions are fine. So the next topic is for polls. Let me one more time share my screen here, and I'll share my window so you can see my controls. So down here in the bottom right of your panels are, this is where you can open and close the participants window or the chat. There's also little three dots here for more, and the option is right now that we've got is polling. And if you want to add a poll to your sections, this is a pretty quick tool. It's fun to use. The interface is slightly different between a PC and an Apple platform, but it's the same idea. You can choose you could add questions. Three different types of questions you can choose from are multiple choice or multiple answer, where you can check all that apply, or even a short answer field where people can type in their responses. But I'll just add a new multiple choice question, and you simply type it at the top here. How are you today? Inquiring minds want to know. And then down here in the answer section, we just add answers, as many as you'd like. Good. Great. Or best day ever. So those are your options. And as the host, I can choose whether or not I want to record individual responses or just take the pulse of the room in general and see how people respond to it. And from that, let me stop sharing so you can get the regular experience here. And I'll open the poll, give people a chance to place your bets. And it gives me a little time, a 5-minute countdown that I can customize that if this is maybe a longer format or a shorter format.
Richard, I missed it. Where do you click to get the polling?
So when you're hosting a meeting, it's going to be in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, down where the little participants and chat icons are.
Right.
There's a 3 dots button that I have that I can choose polling from that. So probably don't see
Thank
that
you.
as an attendee. Sure. Oh, actually, you would see it. Just you can only participate, I guess.
Okay.
All right, so we've got some answers. I'll go ahead and close the poll, and I've got some responses here. Let's see how we're doing today. Okay, a fair amount of best day evers. I'll take that. That's not bad. And then I've got an option underneath that says share with attendees. I can share the poll results, or I can actually share a link to individual results. I'll do the poll results now just so we can see how the class responded, and you can see what the results were there. And that's that. I'll also share my screen, share my interface one more time here. I keep saying one more time like that's the last time I'll do it. But so another option you have in the polling section here is, so say you've created a poll of 10 questions with multiple choice answers, and it's something you maybe will use more than once. You can choose this save option, and it'll put that file on your computer in this ATP format that Webex recognizes. Call it what you will, save it out there. So I've got that file, and then so if I've done that in my personal room or a scheduled meeting ahead of time before class, you can do all the setup work, save that little file, and then when you start your real live meeting, you just go over here to open, and I can choose that poll ATP file. I'll say no, and it just imports that question or that set of questions and answers fresh for you. So definitely saves a lot of the setup time.
So you can set up as many polling questions as you'd like in advance.
Yeah, so you could create a 50-question poll, export it all out as that little file that you save on your computer, and then anytime you're in a WebEx meeting, you just upload that file from your computer, and all the presets done for you. And the last section I've got here is about screen annotations and remote control. So let's see, I'm still sharing my screen window here. And so I'll stop sharing my window. I'll go back to just sharing the desktop or something generic here. I believe for screen annotation, you need to be optimizing for text and images, which is probably going to be a still that you're sharing anyway, but let me go just here to my desktop. In that little pop-down window, I've got an annotate button, which gives me a little pop-out panel here. And the default is nobody's annotating with me right now, but I'll show you how I can change that. But I'll just choose a little pen tool here, and I can write on the screen, move notes around. This is really fun to do with a laptop trackpad, but if say a student's sharing some visual content, you can mark it up in real time with them collaboratively. The top of my little tool list here, I can choose it gives me a list of all the people in the meeting, and I can put a checkbox to who I want to be able to annotate. I will choose all, so now everybody can write on the screen as much as you want. And the annotation tools for you will be on the left-hand side of your window. A little panel there that has pens and shapes and erasers, and yeah, all right, we found them. So it does look like it automatically assigns a different random color to individuals, so it makes it a little bit easier to do team collaboration. And, just a fun way to be able to collaborate on things together. So awesome.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find those tools you were talking about.
So it should be within the window of content that I'm sharing. So my desktop here, on the left-hand side, there should be a vertical tray, I guess, of tools. If you're If you're in the web browser and not in the app, some web browsers may not have it, if it's maybe a platform limitation.
After I look at your video again, I'll find it, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if this part will actually be captured by the recording because it's a panel tool, but when you're hosting, like I said, we can walk through it one-to-one, and if this is something you want to use and become adept with, but that's just kind of the art of the possible. I've also got a little save button now, and James and Rory, I did figure out in the control panel where that was disabled. So you can save these out as, it actually gives you a couple of options, but you can save it as an annotation as a JPEG. So you can save that to your desktop to recall later and archive if you'd like.
Richard, can this just made me think about something. Can students share in writing on the whiteboard?
Yeah, so in my host controls at the very top of that tool is it gives me a list of everybody that's in the session. And
Right.
so I can check individuals to be able to participate in that annotation. I can check all, and then everybody, like we just did, will have the ability to collaborate like that. And in addition to doing that on top of a screen share, we can also do that as a whiteboard. So when I choose the share button down at the bottom, at the very bottom row, one of the options is new whiteboard. So I'll go ahead and create that. And this just creates a whiteboard space. Same tool set. And I believe if we're on a whiteboard, the default is that everybody can participate on it. So there's highlighting.
Huh. I never figured that out on Zoom. So.
Well, yeah, I'm learning a lot of things by doing this course myself. This isn't stuff we use in our team meetings a lot, but I could see this
For
being
some reason,
helpful.
I can't participate on this one.
This is one not letting you
I'm not able
whiteboard.
to get in there.
Well,
I'm annotating, but
You have to click your tool. You have to click if you want a pencil or a pen or whatever.
oh, that's why maybe. Yeah,
Is
that's
that all it is?
That was
Okay.
it. I was
Sweet.
just clicking on the colors.
so you would go into the participant section and just click people's names and they would be able to write in the whiteboard.
It's a little bit different. Let me see if I can share my screen now that we've got this one going. So this is a little bit of a recursive share, but okay. Yeah, so here's my meeting window. This is what it looks like for me. And up in the top of this tools list here, this is the little, this is where you control who's participating. So I can choose all or none, individuals.
Gotcha.
I'll just light it up for everybody.
That's very important.
And the question about importing a graphic or something to annotate on, to me, that's just if you share your screen or a window, if you've got that graphic pulled up, you can annotate on top of that, and then you'll be able to save out that graphic with annotations as a picture file. So whiteboarding is really just for kind of free form idea, brainstorming, things like that. And then using the annotation tools on top of shared content is if you're marking up some kind of graphic or file or something that you're working off of. So I can see both of those being useful.
Hey, Rick, I have a question. What happens to everything that you do on this whiteboard? Can you like save it somehow, some way, and then pass it on to someone else?
Yeah, let me show you that as well. I just stopped sharing, but let me go ahead and turn that back on for this. So back in share my meeting window. So the top one was everybody who can participate, and the bottom option here is the save. So I can save this whiteboard document, this universal communications format. It's the most non-universal thing I've ever seen, but luckily PDF is an option. So you can save these out as PDF files.
Okay.
Another thing I'll say is when you're sharing, you can do multiple new whiteboards. So now I've got a second whiteboard for us, and we can toggle back and forth between whiteboard 1 and whiteboard 2. We can rename those whiteboards to something more intuitive, and then like I said, you can save those out as a PDF file or a universal communications format file if you'd like.
Awesome.
So,
Thanks.
yep. So I'll stop sharing this, and the last piece I wanted to go over was kind of a random one, but so if I'm sharing my screen, one of the options I have up in my little pop-down bar as the host is it says assign. And so I can pass keyboard and mouse control to anybody that's in the meeting. There may be some setup work that's required with this. I believe both participants have to be using the application to actually make this feature work. But like I said, it's a free application. It's available to anybody, whether they're a guest or a member of the college. So if might be mission critical to you, check it out. I'll just simply choose James here on my team and grant him control of the screen. And so my hands are up, and Jimmy should be able to drive the mouse around and press buttons on my computer. Okay, yeah, so I'm not doing that. This is him driving. You know, caveat, be mindful of who you give remote full control of your computer to.
Definitely.
But the flip of this could be useful too. Say if you've got a student that you're teaching how to use software and it's, like press that button, just, if they can figure out how to pass control to you that way, then you can literally move their mouse for them, press the button on their interface and show them how it's done. So,
But they all would have to have the application downloaded to do that.
yeah, I believe that's true. I don't
It's gonna do
think
it
that
up
you're
front.
going to be able, I'm happy to stick on if anybody's just using the web browser right now. You can share your content or share your screen and go up to that assign feature and see if it will allow you to.
I can try it.
You want to give it a shot? Yeah. Real-time experimentation. If anybody else has any questions while we're just kind of playing around, I think
Yeah.
I've gotten through mine.
Rich, I have a basic question because WebEx is new to me. How do you just share a simple file to the students from, let's say, the host computer?
So you're saying like I want to send you a copy of a file versus like just looking at it on a screen as we are now?
No, let's say I'm running a class and I have a syllabus that I want to show the students, and the syllabus is in my computer under my document files. And I just want to put it up on the screen where all the students can see that.
Sure. Well, that's kind of what Michael's doing now. There's a share button down at the bottom of your screen under the video window. And clicking that, it gives you a few options. The first one is the most intuitive. I want to share my screen, and that just shows everything that you can see. What you see is what you get.
Okay.
The option below that I just want to share a specific window that's open. So maybe you've got PowerPoint open, you've got a document open, you've got your email open, but I just want to show Microsoft Word. So if you choose that, it'll just choose that window. That window has to be open before you can choose it as an option, but that's how that's done.
So I have to open up the file before I can share it.
Yeah, unless you're just doing share my screen, in which case you can operate like you would normally. Everybody will just be spying on you at that point.
Yeah.
Good to know about if you're aware of it, but
Well,
scary if you can't.
So can I ask someone
I have nothing to hide.
Yeah, as long as you know you're being looked at, it's okay. So, Michael, at the top of your screen, if you hover your mouse at the top, do you get a little pop-down orange bar?
I see it. Assign.
Assign, yeah. See if my name is an option in there.
Pass control. It says pass keyboard and mouse control. Allow to annotate.
Yeah, try
everybody's name is there.
Pass keyboard and mouse control, and then choose me, for example. I'll see if I can drive your computer.
Okay. Do you want Richard to control? I'm saying grant control.
Okay, and it gives me a pop-up that says the presenter granted you remote control. Press take control to continue. All right.
And there you go. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So can I ask someone to try to do it who doesn't have the app? Because I know you have the app, right, Richard?
Yeah, I am using the app, but you're not, right? Are you just in the web browser?
No, I'm not. I'm not using the app. I'm just in the meeting.
Okay.
So
well, I didn't mean to. I'm trying to write "Hello World" here, but a little laggy. Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah. It just gave up, I guess.
So can I ask Charlotte to control the machine? Charlotte, you're not using the app, right? Your mic is off.
It's muted.
So can you show us how to change the margins in Word? Or can you just move the mouse around?
Yeah. I'll take control. Here we go.
Yeah, she can. So maybe you don't need the app then.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that's very encouraging then for working with students, because that was always our vision. We didn't want to set up a platform that you have to download software for. You have to have certain computer requirements, et cetera, et cetera. We wanted to make it as universal as you can. And then COVID happened. So it's like, it's a good thing we were thinking that way. That's great. Yeah, that you can just do that right through the web browser. I will say that not all not all web browsers are created equal. So if you're running like the latest version of Chrome, you're probably going to have better results than somebody running a version of Safari 3 years old.
Right.
And that's a real issue because a lot of people are working, students especially are working with older computers and, inherited devices, things like that.
Right.
So there, the app might be a good equalizer for you. But casual collaboration, that's awesome.
So
I
Rick,
have
in
a,
order to do this, do we have to, someone has to be the host and then you have to assign someone else as the co-host in order to pass the ability to control the other person's computer?
Well, I'm not a host or a co-host, and I initiated it
Oh,
just
okay.
by sharing, by presenting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's even
I
more
have a,
open than I
I
thought it
have
would
a
be.
question about saving the recordings, uploading them to Blackboard. I had
Okay.
a lot of trouble with that last semester. Can you just review that, please? Like once
Yeah,
recording comes into your email, what do you do?
sure. What I like to do, I would always direct us back to the fitnyc.webex.com site. Michael, I'm going to take
Okay.
over the
Yeah.
sharing here. Yeah, so you're logged in here, and if you go over to your recording session,
Right.
you'll see your recording.
Yeah.
You certainly can download this and then upload it again to another platform, et cetera, deal with the closed captioning and all the requirements that Blackboard's requiring. I mean, that we all have to do really. I'm a big fan of just doing the share.
Okay.
Then you can copy this little URL that it will create down here. You don't even have to add password protection. If you want to put a password on it, you can be,
Okay.
something. Don't ever use password as a password. That's a bad IT guy. Don't do that.
Right.
But you copy that link, you can put it into a class announcement or a class email, and then when students come to that, they'll come to. Let me find something with words in it here. I don't know what all these meetings are. I'm sorry. I've been doing too many demos lately. All right. Well, here's just a little personal room meeting I did. Hopefully nothing too complicated. So they'll come to this page where they'll be able to play the file. The closed captioning is going to be integrated already. This feature on the right is awesome. This transcript that it creates, you can search for terms in that. So if you can spell. So if a student's thinking back to a lecture that you've given and they're like, oh, there was at one point where they were talking about, you know, pick your topic, artwork. You can search the word artwork and it will
Mhm.
show you the time code and let you go directly to that point in the lecture. So if you've got a 3-hour
That's great.
lecture, maybe. Yeah, I wish that stuff was around when I was in college because it just makes it so much easier to go non-linearly to the points
Right.
of interest
Okay,
there.
so I share, I set up the link, I say whatever I'd like, and they retrieve it from WebEx, or
Yeah,
will they get an email?
um, so the link itself, I mean, that's just like any web link. And what I'm suggesting is if you just put it in your Blackboard, you can do like a class announcement where you post something.
Right. Okay.
Or you can send an email to the class that way and just say, "Hi, everybody, here's a video from this lecture, paste link." And then when
Okay.
they click on that. So the delivery options, I guess, are infinite. But once they click that link, you're
They have
done.
this.
The player is there, the compliance
Mhm.
is there. You also
Okay.
can come to this as well. So, the auto captioning is great, but it's still a robot. It's not super
Right.
perfect. So if you click this little pencil icon, you can trim the beginning and end of the video. So maybe if there's like 10 minutes of talking before your session began, you want to cut that out from what you're sharing. You can
Okay.
actually edit there's a little pencil icon for the individual caption sections. So if they love to call us MIT every time someone says FIT, so you can go in and find that, change it to FIT
Okay.
professional names. So I think that's the easiest method, but
Okay.
you also
Okay.
do always have that option to download those files, bring it down as you get the transcript file and the recording itself, and that's a high definition MP4 file that you can put in your Google Drive or just keep in your back pocket for archival purposes as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Certainly.
Richard, if you pause recording in the middle of a session, does it make two files or just one file for the whole session?
That's a great question. So your options when you're recording are to either pause or stop. If you pause and then restart again, it's going to present itself as one contiguous file when you're looking at it. It'll just skip that time that you had paused. If you stop, you can always restart again as many times as you want, and that will create distinct individual files for you to go and review. So depending on how much clutter, I guess, you want in your recording file is how to use those, but both are
And then there
good
will be
options.
separate links for each file?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So if you stop, there'll be a separate link. If you pause, it'll be the same link.
Okay, thank
you. Mm-hmm.
And you can set up breakout sessions before class starts, say, right? And
yes,
yeah.
When we're looking at
Okay.
the fitnyc.webex.com site, one of the advanced options is to pre-assign breakout rooms.
Okay. And then they last for however long you want them to last. And
yeah, that assignment's based on that meeting that you're scheduling, and that meeting that you're scheduling can be a recurring meeting that goes on for infinity.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Certainly. Yeah. A lot of good questions. I did record this session, and our hope is to be able to use these for people that aren't able to join live. And I think you guys really had some great questions of this that wasn't in the script. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
And so I'll close
James,
out, for those of you who are still here, before I lose the opportunity, this is not the end all be all of WebEx. And if you ever have troubles along the way or just want to ask more questions, what we've tried to do this year is bring everything to Tech Help. So if you go to techhelp.fitnyc.edu, you can create a ticket. And if you search WebEx when you're doing that, it'll bring you to the option to request a one-on-one appointment for troubleshooting or request a one-on-one appointment for orientation. So we can assign a technician to you, and they'll find an appointment time. We'll get on a call like this so we can share the screen and work with you and overcome whatever questions you might have. So it continues. We're still here even though the workshop's over.
How can we access the recorded session?
Right now, it just lives in my account here. So what I'm hoping to do, I'll work with Rory and the IT training team to put it on that same employee training site or something like that. I'll have to talk to the people that do our website, but that's the idea. So if you don't have the live session, you can come find a recorded session of it.
Okay.
Sound good? Excellent.
Thank you.
Rick, I have
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Great session, and please don't ever hesitate to reach out if you need more. I'm definitely glad I recorded this one. First applause we've received in this area. So. All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
everybody.
Rory.